Doctor, I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Kasterborous.
I hope the ears are a bit less conspicuous this time.
You might be a doctor, but I am.
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you expect.
Absolutely fantastic.
All of time and space, everything that ever happened or ever will. Where do you want to start?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Bigger on the Inside, the new Who Doctor Who Watch Along podcast.
It's tricky, isn't it?
I was thinking about something else. I was thinking about how I was going to introduce you, but now I've already spoken, so I don't have to. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm not too bad. How are you? Good
I'm
week?
all right. I'm all right.
Are you over England's defeat in the Euros Cup?
Honestly, I was pretty deflated in the moment, like when we lost, but like about less than an hour later, I was over it, and we did very well. We played very well. That's the best England's been in most of our lifetimes.
It's always on your birthday as well when we lose. I remember when we fell out of the last World Cup, it was your birthday. This time when we fell out the Euros, it was your birthday as well. Did you have a nice birthday?
I did have a nice birthday, yeah. It's just a shame that it's a football omen.
Did you get lots of Doctor Who presents?
No, not a single one.
Why would you? If someone got me a Doctor Who present a couple of years back, and it was very kind, and it wasn't like a Funko Pop. It was a very nice piece of art. It was like one of those metal plates that magnets to the wall.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those. It's got like this really nice Doctor Who print on. Like the print's really nice. Obviously, I've said thank you, but it's just kind of been in my room for ages. Maybe I'll give it away as a competition prize one day.
I mean, you gave me a very nice. You gave me a very nice.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry.
No, go on. Sorry, I was talking.
I was just saying that you got me a very nice Doctor Who birthday present one time. Because what was it? Peter Capaldi was filming. What was it? Was it Dickens? No, it was David Copperfield.
It was.
He was filming.
The personal history of David Copperfield. It was, yeah.
Yeah, and you bought like this Doctor Who graphic novel and got him to sign it for me.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think I can't remember what day your birthday was that year, but say it was a Saturday. I was there. I got that signed that morning, but the day before I'd been and got my own graphic novel signed, which I only read within the last 12 months, and the one I got's rubbish. It's a really boring story. So I'm kind of like really bummed out that I got like this legend to sign this really sort of naff book.
Did you get him to sign your poster?
No, I didn't. So here's the thing, listeners, is I have at the time was the complete Doctors. It was for the 50th. And so far on it, I have David Bradley, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, and David Tennant on it. And but I can't remember if it was scheduled rain. I thought I'm not going to risk standing outside in the rain with my cherished poster. Yeah. But yeah, so if anybody knows where, I know Eccleston's going to be at Comic-Con in London this year, but unfortunately I won't be attending. So maybe another time.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of Peter Capaldi, that actually transitions quite nicely into our first bit of kind of, not quite Doctor Who news, but kind of Doctor Who adjacent news.
Yeah. I kind of like this stuff. It's kind of refreshing to talk about other things.
Yeah, especially as we're kind of in a sort of Doctor Who drought right now. I feel like that's fair to say. Yeah.
You wait till next week.
Why? What's next week?
Well, it's Comic-Con. Well, we'll talk about it later, but it's Comic-Con this. No, it's Comic-Con at some point. So either next week or the week after, we'll have some Doctor Who news, hopefully. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it is nice to talk about something else. Obviously, Peter Capaldi is playing the character The Thinker in James Gunn's upcoming Suicide Squad film, The Suicide Squad, not to be mistaken with Suicide Squad from, I want to say, 2016.
2016, I think, is right, yeah.
Yeah. And most of this article is him talking about just playing the Thinker. But there's one little excerpt from him where he does make a little Whovian reference, in which he says, and excuse my terrible Capaldi.
I was going to say, we had your Eccleston, we had glimpses at your Tenant so far, but this is a deep dive into the future of the podcast. How is Peter Capaldi impressing your debut?
Yeah, I'm just going to get into the transformative mindset. Clara, be kind. Okay, I'm ready. Working with talking sharks and a giant starfish. Once you've seen Doctor Who, that's just a day in the office. Although hopefully sometimes they're going to be more convincing.
Wow, it was like he was in the room with us, wasn't it, listeners? That's a quote taken from this month's anyway, Empire magazine. I am holding in my hands cover 5 of 5, which has Starro the Thinker and Amanda Waller on the front cover. What do you think to Peter Capaldi's look? It's good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. It's very different for him. He rocks it.
I thought he would have made a good Mr. Freeze, but there you go. I'm sure he's going to be great in this movie as well. But yeah, that quote there,
I'm going to be honest. I feel like the Thinker is one of those characters where you look at him and it's like, yeah, he's going to die.
I don't know. Well, I'll get into that in a minute. But that quote from Capaldi there, I quite like it because I like it. I dislike it because it's sort of going, oh, there's special effects in Doctor Who and whatnot. Which, when we've looked back at these, especially that first Eccleston series, they're not the best. But recently, Doctor Who's special effects have been amazing. So I'm quite surprised that he says that. But then I suppose most people's conscious thought of Doctor Who's wobbly sets and things like that, which kind of sucks that people still think of it like that when it is.
Yeah,
one of
the main villain is like the Dalek, which the Dalek is entirely, well, not entirely, but a big part of its design is influenced by the fact that they had to make something that they could produce on, a 60s BBC TV budget. And that design, the essence of it is pretty much persisted throughout because it's iconic now.
Yeah.
But, it is still kind of like a dome on wheels.
Yeah. Go back to what you said about Capaldi dying in Suicide Squad. I don't think he is. I think he's going to be quite a big player in it.
No, I get the vibe that he's going to be a significant player, but I'm not convinced that he's going to live to the end. Like, James Gunn has been pretty unsubtle in the fact that most of the cast of this film is going to die. Like, literally, the slogan is, they're dying to save the world. So I feel like unless you're like one of the main characters, unless you're Idris Elba or Margot Robbie, I feel like you're not going to live to the end.
Yeah, I know there was a thing where it was like even Harley Quinn could die, but I saw an interview with Margot Robbie where she was like, "Oh, I would love to do something with Poison Ivy in the future." I'm like, "Oh well, you live, you don't die in this."
They were never going to kill Margot Robbie. Like, she's too bankable, and Harley Quinn. Well, I was going to say that Harley Quinn is bankable, but Birds of Prey didn't do that well, did it?
It didn't, but it was a good movie. Me and Harrison, who we sometimes do the podcast with, we went and saw it. It was one of the last films I saw in cinemas before COVID. February last year, I think it was, and we really enjoyed it. It was good fun.
Sonic beat it.
Did it?
Yeah, it beat it in the box office.
Well,
quite effortlessly as well.
I suppose children probably, they love going to the cinema, so not going to really worry about kids' films, are we, Harry?
Nah.
Did you go see Sonic?
I have seen it. Just because like I played all of Sonic as a kid. It's a kids film. It's a very solid kids movie.
Was it a good movie though? Is it enjoyable? Like if I was to watch it
it does what it sets out to do. It sets out to be like an entertaining, like family action comedy thing, and it does that. It's successful. It's not like
Jim Carrey doing it?
It's Jim Carrey's, doing his Jim Carrey thing. If you like Jim Carrey, you'll like him in this film. It's pretty much what you expect it to be. It's harmless, it's fun, it's the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. It's not going to win any Oscars, but it's not trying to.
I feel like it did that, didn't it? Did it win? It won some. I think it won a few awards for special effects and things like that.
I don't think it did. Did it?
I don't know. Maybe I've just made that up. Anyway, Doctor Who podcast.
Yes. And this is something you sent me, which is from Den of Geek, which is them
Oh yeah.
speculating on how Doctor Who should celebrate its 60th anniversary. Now, most of this article, written by Jamie Andrew, is just kind of a retrospective looking back on kind of every anniversary special. But at the end, he shares his own kind of speculation for the 60th could be. Now, we kind of every week pretty much discuss what we think the 60th could be. So it'd be good to hear what everyone else is thinking and kind of discuss that instead.
I was thinking when I sent this over, I was like, is this going to be a thing now where it's every week there's some kind of 60th speculation we talk about every week? Which, if there is, I feel like we should start writing all the speculation down so that when it gets to the 60th, we can go, here's everything we might expect.
But I feel like we've done so every week. We think of different ideas. It's inevitable by the point we get to the 60th, we will have gotten it right at some point.
Female Davros. Female. Right. It's just normal Davros in a blonde wig. No one addresses it. No one says anything. He's just sat there with a nice blonde wig.
Well, that's another idea.
Putting money on it. Carry on. Sorry.
All right. Do you want me to read what Den of Geek thinks for the 60th?
Yeah, give us a summary of what they think.
Oh, a summary. Well, okay, I'll be jumping about a bit. They're not expected. Well, they say that kind of traditionally milestones like the 60th aren't celebrated as much as the 20th or 50th. However, given that the show is currently declining in ratings compared to 2013, perhaps they need something big. They kind of think that the most likely thing would be some cool sort of a multi-doctor story. Most likely involving Joe Martin's fugitive doctor, they think.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, they speculate about perhaps including the classic doctors in some kind of capacity in which they're kidnapped through some kind of time warp thing, which is why they're...
I said that! I've said that in a previous episode. I know I've said that. I think I said that. They should have been taken out of their timeline by the Master, and that the current Doctor has to go and rescue aging versions of past Doctors. So there you go, Den of Geek, listen to Bigger on the Inside.
Another interesting thing that Den of Geek speculate is that they think that perhaps they could bring in kind of...
Put Davros in the wig?
They said the Schalke Doctor.
Who's is that Richard E. Grant?
Yeah, Richard E. Grant's stream of the Schalke Doctor.
I know little to nothing about this, apart from it was an animated 90s thing before Eccleston.
Yeah, I believe it was an animated short for the 40th anniversary, in which Richard E. Grant was the quote-unquote 9th Doctor, and it was like kind of a flash animated thing. I think it was online. But their logic is, if the Timeless Children is still canonical by a 60th, might as well have fun with it and bring in these currently non-canonical Doctors, such as the Schalke Doctor.
That'd be cool. I mean, Richard E. Grant's been in Doctor Who since. He was the Great Intelligence with Matt Smith. But yeah, I think that would be cool to bring something like that in. But it's interesting that they mention that it's losing viewers, but then say they should bring in Jo Martin, which would mean that not a lot of people would know who she is, though. So is that a big enough draw? Because if she's been in a series that's had the decline in viewers, then surely you want to bring in the big guns like Smith.
Well, they also did kind of predict Smith, Tennant, Capaldi, but I kind of skimmed over it because that's pretty much what everyone's predicting.
Yeah.
And that's
it's funny you stretch that. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that's kind of like the obvious thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I saw online that a number of people were speculating that even Smith, when the 60th comes around, if Matt Smith would actually be involved because of his filming commitments with the Game of Thrones series, House of Dragons, I want to say it's called. Also, that's one of these big American... something like that. and that's obviously one of these big American one of these big American dramas. Where it's like one series is going to be 36 episodes. It's one of those shows as well where it's going to be airing whilst they're still filming it. You know, something like The Flash does quite a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if he becomes available to even be in the 60th.
Yeah, and it's also Matt Smith. To my understanding, he's playing like the male lead in that show, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of. I literally know nothing of Game of Thrones, but my understanding is he's like the title. He's not the title character. He's not playing a dragon or a house, but he's the main guy.
I mean, yeah, he's probably, when it comes to Doctor Who actors working right now, he's probably the second biggest name currently in the industry.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but yeah, I see what you mean there, but I wonder if when the 60th comes around, what will happen? Do you think that could be a serious possibility that he wouldn't be able to participate in it because of his commitments to Game of Thrones?
I feel like it's a thing where they'll definitely try to get him to come back, and if they do get him to come back, he would be receiving billing over Tennant. It's kind of like they treat.
Oh, do you think?
Well, if Matt Smith is like big Mr. Hollywood in 2023, I feel like they would treat Matt Smith coming back to Doctor Who as like almost like this A-lister big deal thing.
Yeah, I feel more people have seen, if you go for the last 10 years anyway, more people have seen Smith's work than Tennant. He was in Terminator, he was in The Crown, he's now going to be in Game of Thrones. He was in Alan Partridge not that long ago, just randomly appeared in that as a little cameo. He's doing loads of cool things, whereas Tennant, he's done Broadchurch, but a lot of that is very British-based stuff. And of course, he did Jessica Jones. But do you know what I mean? There's a lot of British television dramas, Channel 4 dramas, ITV dramas, not these big global shows that are streaming worldwide.
Although I don't know how much of a reach it had in the US, but Good Omens is a pretty high-budget show.
That's true. But then again, that's shared billing with Michael Sheen, isn't it? So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
I think this is the thing that kind of I'm thinking, because there's big names in terms of general actors and, Hollywood, UK, all of that. And there's that hierarchy. But then when it comes to kind of which names are big names within the Doctor Who sphere, it's very different. Like, I feel like the biggest names in the world of Doctor Who are actors who have played the Doctor. And if you're getting an actor who's played the Doctor to come back, that's kind of treated as a bigger deal than a huge actor. Like, if you look at the 50th, I feel like people were much more excited for David Tennant coming back than John Hurt to come and play a Doctor, even though John Hurt is a much more kind of well-known name generally.
Yeah, and I feel like the inclusion of John Hurt brought in a lot of outsiders to see what he was going to do with that role. People went, I like John Hurt and Doctor Who, yeah, whatever, I'll watch this. So I feel like bringing Matt Smith into the 60th, he would maybe bring some of his new audience with him into Doctor Who, have maybe been hesitant to watch it since. So people who have watched The Crown but have never seen Doctor Who, and people who have watched this new Game of Thrones thing but not seen Doctor Who, will go, oh, it's Matt Smith from The Crown and Game of Thrones. Oh, I like him. I'll watch this special. Do you know what I mean? He's sort of that new John Hurt almost.
Although then there's the question of, would bringing Matt Smith back to Doctor Who, would that generate a larger audience then for Doctor Who after that? Or would it just cause loads of people to go back and watch Matt Smith's run as the Doctor?
I'm trying to think. Well, yes, people would probably watch that special and then go. I don't know, because it depends on people's understanding of the show. But I'm thinking when I watched Doctor Who, I watched David Tennant, and then I went back and I watched Christopher Eccleston, and then I fell in love with Eccleston, and then more recently did again. So you then just grow to love it. Everybody has their favorite, and then you have to have your favorite to then appreciate the rest of the show. So I don't think it's a big deal if people watch that special because of Matt and then go back and watch Matt Smith, because then they'll see him turn into Peter and they'll watch Peter's stuff, and they will eventually have caught up with where they originally joined on from. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't really, because Doctor Who's a show that's so much about change. If you get into Doctor Who, you can't get into it for one specific actor. You have to kind of get into the show as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. So for example, if they watch the 60th with Matt Smith and they go, amazing, love Matt Smith, they go to his first episode, the 11th hour, which is an amazing jumping on point. And then there's Rory, Amy. Oh, sorry, there's a petrol station just across the bus from me. They will join with Matt and they will see Rory and Amy, and then they will leave and they'll be introduced to Clara, and they'll like Clara, so they'll stay with Clara for Peter. And there's always that layered sort of continuation until you get to Jodie, of course, then it's all new. But by then you're used to it.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one last thing from this Deno Geek article before we move on to the next bit, which is that they think when it comes to the monsters that appear in the special, they think the Daleks and the Cybermen are being overused and that they wouldn't make an impact. And so they suggest, I guess, similarly to the 50th, bringing back the Zygons, that they bring back some sort of classic Who monster, such as the Black Guardian or the Mighty Sutek.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I feel for the sixth, because what they did with the 60th is the Daleks are in it because they're just as famous as the Doctor, so you want them in the show. But you don't just want another Doctor Dalek showdown. It's boring, right? So they've got to do something different with it. I personally think at the Master, that would be great. Davros, but I feel they're saving that for this coming festive special of 2022. So yeah, I've got my theory of what I would like to see for the 60th, and I'm maybe working on something with a couple of people to maybe get some Doctor Who theories going on for the 60th. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think the Master would be great. That would be my pick.
For me, when it comes to bringing back...
the Sea Devils, sorry.
Oh, okay. Is that a classic Who monster?
Yeah, I think they've only appeared once, and it was in a Pertwee episode, but they look great. I've always really liked them.
Yeah. I guess my only real reference for bringing back a classic Who monster is because when I was growing up with Doctor Who, I didn't know which monsters were new and which ones were classic. Like, I didn't realize that, say, the Sontarans were classic, but that the Jadoon were new. I had no idea. It was all just Doctor Who monsters. The only real reference I have for kind of having some sort of awareness that it was a classic Who monster was the Zygons in The Day of the Doctor. And honestly, for me, I almost found it a little underwhelming. And I don't know if it's because kind of the Zygons are almost played in a almost comical, low threat way. Like they were kind of like the main obstacle, but they were by no means the focal point. So I feel like if you were to bring back a classic Who monster, make a big deal of it, treat them as a legitimate threat, really kind of be like, yeah, this guy is back, and it's really cool that they're back, rather than just being a throwaway thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah, you want to bring some. If you're going to bring a monster back that we haven't seen before in a long time, you want to do something cool with them rather than just go, and it's like luring into here. Ta-da! You don't just want to do that. Do you know what I mean? You want to have some sort of reason for them never to have come back, and then what's their big return sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they should bring back the Autons, but all the Autons look like past Doctors, and we don't realise
that would be interesting.
That they're Autons.
We've only had the Autons in New Who in Rose, right?
Yeah, that's it. I'm surprised they've never made a return.
Yeah, you think? I don't know. You think especially. I don't know. I feel like, we still have mannequins. Why not bring them back again?
We do still have mannequins. Go on, Harry. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I think we only have one more thing to discuss, right? Which is this upcoming panel, which you know more about than I do.
Yeah, so San Diego Comic-Con is at home again this year. It was at home last year. DC aren't going to be there, and Marvel aren't going to be there. But Doctor Who is, so hooray for that. And there's going to be a panel with John Bishop. Sorry, let me say that again. With Jodie Whittaker, Mandip Gill, and June Bishop. and a special and a moderator, of course, and a special guest star whose identity has yet to be revealed. People are debating if it's going to be a classic Doctor making a classic Doctor being somebody before Whittaker, or is it going to be Sasha as the Master? Is it going to be that character who is a bit like Trump but isn't like Trump? Is it going to be an announcement where they say, in this series, Catherine Tate's back and here she is, or Alex Kingston as River Song, or whatever? Harry, who do you think said celebrity guest star could be?
Okay, honestly, I had no idea until just a second ago. Because I know that you think it's going to be David Tennant. And
well, I can I just say, I thought that just before I started speaking, but I thought they're bringing them onto the panel for a reveal. So they would. I don't feel like David's going to be in Series 13. So there's going to be a returning character in Series 13, and whoever that returning character in Series 13 is going to be the special guest for the Comic-Con panel.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I agree. I feel like David just does not sound right. To bring him back just for a series crossover feels like an underutilization of bringing back David Tennant.
Exactly right.
And I don't think it's going to be someone from the Chibnall era, because I feel like that would almost be a little underwhelming. So I don't feel like it will be
Tim
Sacha
Shaw.
Baron.
Tim Shaw's back.
Hmm?
Tim Shaw. They bring back Tim Shaw, the blue guy with the teeth in his face.
Yeah. Yes, Tim Shaw. What was his actual name? Was it like Ten Shaw or something?
I can't remember. I generally don't know.
I remember it's like a big joke they made in the first episode.
It was, yeah.
Sorry, you remember what I was saying. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, you were saying you don't think it's going to be someone from the Chibnall era.
No, because I feel like that would be a little underwhelming. I feel like Joe Martin or like Sacha Dhawan, I feel like that wouldn't be quite enough to big it up as this special guest star. I feel like if they were going to be on the panel, they'd just be on the panel. I think it has to be a returning character from before Jodie's era. And I honestly had no idea who this could be until you said Alex Kingston, which makes too much sense. It makes a lot of sense for Alex Kingston to come back. I know there's a whole thing that she doesn't know about any of the Doctors past Capaldi, but timey-wimey shit can sort that out.
And Kingston recently did an interview. She's got the River Song book out, the Ruby's Cares, I think it's called. And in that, she talked about how when Capaldi takes her to that planet, that's like her last trip, and then before her next trip is to the Silence of the Library where she dies. So she has that last night on that planet, but that night lasts like 100 years or something. Like that. I can't remember.
30 or 40 years.
Yeah, it's something like that, isn't it? So there's loads of time there for River to go on adventures again.
But my understanding was she stayed with the Doctor on that planet for that whole time.
I can't remember.
They kind of have to cut to black, so you don't find out.
Oh, well, maybe we will find out. So I know there was talk of Catherine Tate possibly returning, and she'd been seen in Cardiff, and they weren't allowed to say what she was filming, and Doctor Who was filming there at the same time. So everybody went, it could be Catherine, and we spoke about it in a video. So do you think it could be Catherine?
Just the thing with Catherine is, like, at what point during Donna's story would they reintroduce her? Would it be Donna now? Because if that happened, then she'd like remember shit and die, right?
The rumor was that it was Donna between the Runaway Bride and Partners in Crime.
So she finds a doctor, but not the doctor she wants, and she's like, "I'm going to keep searching."
Possibly, or unless she just never works out that it's a future version of the Doctor, because she doesn't know at this point anyway. She doesn't know the Doctor can change.
That could work for Donna. I feel like if they could put a comedic edge that she just doesn't realize it's the Doctor, because obviously she doesn't know about regeneration. So
that's true. Yeah. Any more news, Harry? Any more news?
I believe that's everything you gave me.
That is everything. Oh, one thing I do want to talk about is this week or last week I went and saw Black Widow, the Marvel movie, which was, you know, is what it is. But actually, no, I'll edit this out. We won't talk about this.
Are we not going to talk about Black Widow?
No, we'll leave it because I'm going to go see it again tomorrow with some friends, so I might change my opinions.
Okay. You're going to like with pop songs, you're just gonna listen to them on repeat until you're brainwashed into thinking it's actually good.
Good for you, you look happy and healthy, not me. If you ever care to ask, good for you, you're doing great without me, baby. God, I wish that I could do that.
What song is that?
That's Good for You by Olivia Rodrigo. Have you not heard it? It's like the best song ever at the moment.
I don't listen to radio.
Oh my goodness, Harry! I will send you a link. I love it. You'll really like it, actually.
Would I?
Yeah, it's very sort of early 2000s skate park sort of.
Oh, cool!
Music.
Like Avril Lavigne vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. This whole bit's being
cut. Nice. Yeah, cool. Right, if that's all the news, then Harry, do you want to segue us into this week's episode?
Oh,
no! I do have something to say. If you've listened this far, which I very much doubt, go and check our Twitter account because this week we will be announcing a new guest celebrity interview with somebody who was in Doctor Who Series 4. So yeah, go check that out. We'll be announcing who that is shortly. So yeah, cool, fun. Sorry, Harry, back to you.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but I always record this from my apartment in Birmingham, which is like on the 8th floor. And in the middle of summer, it gets like really, really like sweltering hot right now. Okay. And like for audio, I turn my fan off, I close the window. So it's like, I'm pretty subtle about it, but I'm like burning here, man. It's like I'm amongst like fires. In, I don't know, some nondescript ancient Roman city.
Yeah.
I know. What are those cities called? Like, what are the names of some of those ancient Roman cities that exist anymore?
Rome
Still exists, Tim.
Okay. Pompeii?
Oh yeah, Pompeii. It's like amongst like fires in Pompeii or like fires of Pompeii. Speaking of fires of Pompeii, I did it.
That was good effort for probably the most trickiest one of this series. Actually, no, Planet of the Ood is going to be a bugger. And the Sontaran stratagem.
See, when we started this, the episode titles had pretty, ambiguous names. But now they're really specific about what happens in them. Why couldn't every episode just be called like Rose or Blink or Human Nature, Like, why are we going to be called like the genesis of the Fleeble Bleeble Ding Dong? Like,
Anyway, enjoy the rest of the episode, guys. The audio does get better, I promise. And of course, go follow us on Twitter to find out who that special guest is going to be. We'll see you around on the flip side. Flippity flop. See you or not.
Radical.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut it down, pop up!
Humans are better in one respect. You are better at subscribing. Seek, locate, subscribe.
What's the point in having you all?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Big on the Inside, the new Who Doctor Who watch along podcast. We're doing. Oh, I've already done that bit, haven't I? I do this a lot now, where I seem to reintroduce the episodes. But you know where you are. You've been listening for a good 20 minutes so far. I'm still here, Tim Saxby, and I'm still here with Harry. You still here, Harry?
I'm still here. Yeah.
As slick as always. And what episode are we doing today, Harry?
Today we are doing The Fires of Pompeii by, I need to check his name.
I watched this episode an hour ago. I started watching an hour ago, and the name came up, and I didn't recognize the name.
No, I think this is their first. Brian, nope. Where's the writer?
James something, I feel. James Moran.
Oh, James Moran. James Moran, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what other Doctor Who work he's done. I will look it up through the course of this episode. But the Fights of Pompeii, Harry, what did you make of it?
Honestly, I think for me, this might have been my kind of Unquiet Dead moment.
Oh, right, okay.
For you weren't expecting much from stories like The Unquiet Dead and just the Shakespeare Code when we first watched them, and you were really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And that's exactly what happened for me. You know, I thought this was kind of, a standard first historical of the series, kind of introduced the Doctor-companion dynamic a bit more. It exceeded my expectations, what I remembered of the episode. There was a lot more going on in this than I remembered was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I literally just finished watching it 20 minutes ago, and I enjoyed aspects of it, but I did have a few problems with it that I'm sure we'll get to as we go along. But I think one thing that we should probably talk about straight away is the fact that this episode has 2 cast members that are going to return and have significant roles in Doctor Who, that being Karen Gillan and Peter Capaldi. Karen Gillan is pretty much unrecognizable. I feel if someone didn't tell you that was Karen Gillan, you wouldn't really look twice.
Yeah, I'd agree, because I did not realize Karen Gillan was in this episode.
Did you not? Did you not?
No, who was she?
She was one of the lead people in Red. She's the one who spots Tennant and Donna at the start. You know, she's running through. And
she's the one in the makeup.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I did not recognize her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Karen. And also, she isn't speaking with a Scottish accent as well, which threw me for a little while as well. So, yeah. Peter Capaldi also in this episode. Sorry, go on.
I just made a very silly joke about how that's what actors do, I guess. Okay.
Peter Capaldi also in the episode. One of his first appearances in Doctor Who, well then obviously God's being tortured and Doctor Who again. When watching this, do you struggle to not see the 12th Doctor?
The only times that I struggle is when he is interacting with David Tennant.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing where it almost feels like a crossover before a crossover. When it's just kind of him in frame within the context of the scene, I can make that disconnection and just view him as the character he's playing here. It's only when he's literally in the same frame as David Tennant where I think, ooh, this is weird.
Yeah. And those two play off each other really well, and that's a multi-Doctor combo I never really considered is 12 and 10. But I feel those two would be great on screen together after their chemistry in this episode anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very different performance from Capaldi that he's providing here compared to... It's not like you watch this and you think, oh, he could play the Doctor well someday. Like the role he's playing is entirely different to how he approaches the Doctor, which, you know, is what you'd expect from a good actor. And it's a great performance and a great character. And you can tell that he loves Doctor Who because he's getting the most out of it. And he's taking it so seriously and treating it with so much respect.
Yeah, definitely. I would be interested when we come to watch something like his Tortured episodes in Miracle Day, I think. If there's more of his Doctor appearing in that, I kind of want to see where Moffat picked him from. What did Moffat see? What role did he see him in? The way he went, oh, that's very Doctor-y.
Or was it? I mean, I don't know if it was that or that Moffat just knew that Capaldi was a huge fan, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure if we looked, it wouldn't be hard to find some kind of behind-the-scenes thing of Moffat explaining just why he picked Capaldi.
Yeah, definitely. The start of this episode does also quite a good job, as every series sort of seems to do now, is re-establishing the audience with very basic rules of time travel, which is there is fixed points, there's non-fixed points. No matter where you go, you'll be able to understand the language and read everything. And the Doctor's morals of interfering and not interfering, which plays quite a big part in this episode. But I like the fact they don't beat you over the head with it. It's almost worked into the story quite well.
Well, it's like that's like they, instead of making it an expository thing, they use that concept which we perhaps take for granted as viewers and really kind of explore what that means for the Doctor, like psychologically, how that affects him that he isn't able to do those things.
Yeah. It's also in that sequence at the start where he sort of loses his rag with Donna a bit, where they do that Time Lord Gallifrey yes thing, and she says Donna human no. He says Doctor Time Lord yes, Donna human no, where they're talking about whether or not they're going to save the people and if they're going to tell people about Volcano Day the next day and stuff like that. And I quite like that sequence because you can sort of tell that the 10th Doctor goes through phases of either wanting to travel with people or not wanting to travel with people. And it seems like at that moment he was almost slightly pissed with himself that he'd let somebody else come along with him who's just going to sort of get in the way and he's going to have to reteach all this stuff to again.
You kind of get a vibe that kind of between this and Voyage of the Damned, kind of between series 4 and that there's been perhaps a wider gap in time than there has been before. It feels like he's adjusted to, and perhaps before Donna came back into his life, he'd almost accepted that I'm going to just travel alone now.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, this is a shift for him that he wasn't anticipating, and he's having to, like you said, readjust to that. Similarly to how kind of you saw a lot of contention between the 9th Doctor and Rose in something like The End of the World.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how long it has been then since Martha leaving to Donna from Voyage of the Damned to Donna joining.
I don't know, I've heard some people say that the 10th Doctor was canonically 100 years.
Perhaps. That's Big Finish, don't know. There's a really, aside from Capaldi and Karen Gillan, there's also a really good supporting cast of characters in this. Despite, this is probably one of my biggest problems I have with this episode, is there's a really good cast of characters, but I don't feel a lot of them get fleshed out enough. And I feel that there should have been less sci-fi elements and more human elements with the actual cast of characters and with Capaldi's family, and more focused on that and less focused on the big monster and the big fire monster and the
giant lava monsters.
Yeah, and the stern woman and all that. Because there is a note here where I've got one note and it says, "What's happening?" ? Because at one point I was watching it and I just sort of had what happened when we watched Tenet, and I sort of went, "Oh, I'm watching this, but I don't really know what's going on." And I was sort of like enjoying the story and the music and the sets and the way it was looking, but then I was like, why is he crawling into the ground and why is he picking up dust? I was like, and who's this old guy who's telling us? Maybe I wasn't fully concentrated in this episode, but I feel it tried to possibly cram in too much when there were stronger story elements it could have developed.
Perhaps kind of like, because obviously we had all the women in red and them kind of being the whole fortune teller people worshipping the mountain. Perhaps the whole element of like the lava monster people aliens, maybe that was an element that perhaps they could have found a way to maybe remove that and tie the other older guy into that group of women and maybe just made it all a bit tighter.
Yeah. I'm just looking here at James Moran's TARDIS wiki. He wrote Doctor Who: The Flies to Pompeii is the only Doctor Who episode what he wrote, and he wrote 2 Torchwood episodes, some short trips. Are they Big Finish stuff, I want to say?
Are short trips like those like online shorts that they did?
Doctor 8th Doctor. I'm just having a quick look. TARDIS Wiki's trying to bombard me with adverts for Loki, even though I know I'm going to watch it. Companions was the 18th story in a Short Trips anthology, Short Trips Christmas Around the World. It's right, and features the 8th Doctor. It's literally just a short story. So he's wrote other Doctor Who things, but hasn't come back to the actual show. Yeah, he has wrote some Big Finish stuff. But yeah, that's about it. So I'm surprised. That is surprising me because a lot of people seem to really enjoy this episode. It seems to be one that has a lot of
Maybe
key elements, and is obviously in Capaldi's tenure heavily called back to in a certain episode.
maybe the issue you're having with saying is you felt there was a bit too much in the story. Maybe that ties to if this is a primarily Big Finish writer. Obviously, Big Finish stories don't have the same restrictions in terms of how long they have to be. So maybe if this had been the length of a Big Finish story and all these ideas and characters had a bit more space to breathe, like you would have liked, then
maybe this would have worked as a two-parter.
Perhaps this could have been, which is interesting, is you don't normally like the two-parters.
No, I don't, but I feel this could have. I often find that the two-parters I don't like because I often find there isn't enough story to justify two parts. But then there's usually one or two episodes of series where I'm like, it was too crammed. You needed time to breathe, and I feel this was one of them.
It takes us back to that thing that perhaps an optimum Doctor Who story length is like an hour or an hour 10.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned them briefly then, the women in red. I can't remember their names. But what did you think to their design? It's very simplistic, but when you get a shot of them with their hands over their eyes and they've got eyes drawn on the back of their hand, it did make me sort of giggle a little bit because I was like, oh, that's quite a simplistic design choice, and it's a bit maybe on the nose a little bit. I'm not sure if that's something that ever actually happened, but it feels something of an obvious choice almost.
It worked for me just because it was edited in a very slick way. It kind of it showed one of them covering their eyes and talking, and it cuts to the other one doing the same thing, the same position. And for me, because it communicated very clearly what they were doing. For me, the editing was so clear, and it was efficient storytelling for me. So I didn't really mind if it was a bit obvious.
Something that I did like about this episode is even though it's a historical episode, there's a lot of modern elements within it, especially the family unit. There's the moody teenage son, which I really enjoy. That sort of, even in Pompeii, he didn't want to be worshipping the gods. He just wanted to do his own thing, and he jealous of his sister and all this. And I just thought it worked out really well, especially when he's been out drinking and Capaldi's like, oh, you hungover, what an embarrassment. And he's clapping his hands in his ear and stuff like that. I really like those sort of elements where it's sort of, you don't really question it when you're watching it. You're not like, they wouldn't really be doing this in Pompeii. They wouldn't be saying mates and all this stuff and sort of the language they use as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar way to like how in Shakespeare Code they made Shakespeare, they kind of modernized the way he spoke and interacted quite a bit. Because really kind of, with these historical stories, I feel like those key historical figures they meet are always kind of very much the heart of the story, being this family, Charles Dickens, William Shakespeare. And so I feel like it makes sense for them to kind of modernize the way that they are, especially for an audience, so that we can kind of have them as something that grounds us in this, what is otherwise a bit of an unfamiliar place.
Yeah. There was something mentioned in this episode that sort of slipped my mind beforehand, which is the other old guy who is this. The thing with this episode is that I can't remember any characters' names, but you know who I'm talking about. He comes in and he says to the doctor that she is returning, and he turns to Donna and he says, there is something on your back. And I'd forgotten that this was a reoccurring theme throughout this episode, throughout this series, because last week we had the return of Rose Tyler, but we don't see a return of Rose this episode. But following episodes, we do get glimpses. So I like the fact that this is more visual for an audience than something like Vote Saxon or Bad Wolf.
Yeah, I think it was a very cool way of doing it. I guess at this point in the series, kind of recurring viewers have kind of accepted that Russell likes to kind of have these things planted.
Yeah.
Throughout a series building up to a finale. So I guess it just makes sense to kind of escalate that and make it a much more prominent thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also picked up the doctor mentions his father just casually when the young boy of the family says, don't tell my father, and the doctor says, as long as you don't tell mine. It's all got me thinking, how would you feel if we were introduced to the doctor's sort of relatives and family? Because we will get to it when we talk about Tennant's last episode. There is a few story rumors there, but I feel I would quite like a doctor to meet a father or mother, maybe not both of them, but maybe just the one. I feel it would be quite rewarding and quite nice to see something like that.
That's interesting, because the thing I immediately think about there is what Stephen Moffat said in that extensive interview when he quit as showrunner on a YouTube channel, where he said that kind of he feels while you can reveal some things about the Doctor's life and his past, the thing that he specifically said he would never do is he would never show Mrs. Who, because obviously, because the Susan, the first companion, is the Doctor's granddaughter. We know the Doctor must have therefore have had a family and children and then grandchildren. And Moffat, to him, he feels like revealing the Doctor's family is a no-go area, and it removes. Especially because we know so much now at this point in lore about the Doctor, that they're a Time Lord, they grew up with the Master, they're from Gallifrey and all of that. Perhaps it's necessary to keep some things ambiguous and to maintain a certain level of mystery.
Yeah, I like that thing of when he met, because obviously he had kids, so I kind of like that aspect that's kind of hidden a little bit. But I think it would be nice for, especially a Tennant character, especially at the end. We'll wait till we get to Tennant's last episode. But Whittaker, for example, I feel that would be a really good idea if she could meet her father, or their father, sorry. I feel like whatever the gender of the Doctor is, they should therefore meet the reversal parent. So a female Doctor should meet the father and a male Doctor should meet the mother. And I feel that would be quite, maybe just for one episode, just a quite fun sort of moment that would be quite heartwarming, I feel.
The question I have though is, like, once you reveal them, what do you do with that? What does that bring to a Doctor Who story beyond, oh, this is a relative of the Doctor, that's cool? Like, I feel like you need a compelling storytelling idea, and especially with a show that's been on this long, you need something really compelling as a storytelling idea to suddenly bring in this massive addition to the lore.
Yeah, I feel there's been 2 points since it's come back where that could have happened, but I feel like those were the two penultimate points where if they were going to do it now, it would maybe feel forced.
Tell me what those points are when we reach them. I know one of them, obviously.
Some great 10th Doctor moments in this. Something that I've started to notice about the 10th Doctor, whenever he comes in at the end to save his companions, he does like this sort of rambling speech where he just spurts a load of bollocks and sounds really clever and then saves everybody. Where he comes in and he's like, Donna's tied to that thing, and he comes in talking about all this historical people who he's been and kissed. And then he's going on about, oh, don't worry, it's just us girls. And he's messing around, and then just like casually just lets Donna out, and nobody seems to question him.
Yeah, that is the 10th Doctor. He does like to kind of, he takes a notable amount of joy in kind of saving the day. He's quite cocky when he does that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. This story really kind of pushes the Doctor to those extremes. Like in that scene, like he's got the whole water pistol and he's doing very silly things with that, whilst also still saving the day. And then later on, you get very weighty moments from him. It's interesting that this story kind of, because normally you get kind of one or the other in a Doctor Who story, but I don't know, maybe it's something like the presence of Donna that's kind of pushing him to those extremes. I don't know.
We should probably talk about that then. The penultimate of this episode. Sorry, the conclusion to this episode is that he does go back and he does save Peter Capaldi and his kids. I find weird saying that. Well, I can't remember the character's name, but they go back and they save just those people, and I think that links quite well to what Clive Swift's character said in Voyage of the Damned, Mr. Copperfield, where he says, "If you could decide who lives and who dies, that would make you a villain." And this is really the start of that journey of something that does become a motif throughout the rest of the 10th Doctor's tenure of deciding who lives and who dies. And I think this is probably one of the best examples we get of it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because here it's framed very much as a good thing, and that Donna is a necessary addition to the TARDIS team, and that she's grounding the Doctor and giving him that human touch that perhaps he lacks. And it's kind of a great thing that he's saving these people. But at the same time, before that, he's kind of right when he says, I can't just save people. If I could go back and save people, I would, but I can't. It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I
There's
also
a lot
I
to
think
kind
that
of
also works quite well
unpack
because Donna is an older character compared to Martha and Rose, so she's not as blindsided and mesmerized by the 10th Doctor's charm and what he's able to show off. She's still got that sort of grounded human element to her, rather than go, oh, look at this magical, handsome man showing me the world. She's like, yeah, that's nice, but check your morals, mate.
Yeah, I mean, she's not really in awe of the Doctor at all. She isn't at all mesmerized by how clever or handsome or anything is. Like you said, like the reason that really she's with him is for the adventure itself, is not for him specifically.
Yeah.
And so that means she does have that room to challenge him in a perhaps more objective way than the last two companions have had.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm just trying to work out how old Donna Noble would be based off Catherine Tate's age. So Catherine Tate at the time was 40 years old. So 35-ish, I would probably put Donna, whereas Rose is 19. Martha was a little bit older. I think she was about 20 because she just finished university and was at medical school. Whereas Donna is like a whole 2 decades older than the two of them, really. So I quite like that sort of more grounded friendship rather than just showy off sort of mesmerized handsomeness.
Is Catherine Tate slightly older than David Tennant?
David Tennant has just turned 50, I think. David Tennant age. David Tennant is 50. So Catherine Tate's age is Catherine Tate is 51.
So they're basically the same age.
Yeah.
But that is interesting because obviously, although the Doctor canonically is a character who's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, having an element of kind of the actor's age always feeds into the role. Like obviously Tennant and Smith, compared to some others, have had a much more of a youthfulness and an energy about their performances. And so having someone who is the same or an older age to kind of it adds something which you don't usually see, because usually the companion is younger than the actor playing the Doctor. So I know I kind of wish that kind of them being closer in age is something I did more often.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, that would be good. I'm all out of points here, Harry. So before I go on to listeners' thoughts on the episode, do you have anything else to say?
I just want to really commend, especially in the conclusion, the performances that are being put in. I've already said that kind of Capaldi is clearly treating the role with so much seriousness and so much heart.
Yeah.
And you see that from like Catherine Tate as well. Like when she's begging the Doctor to just save someone. Like, I mean, you know, like, because it's just her second episode and as a companion, and we were probably going into, I mean, at the time, you know, I knew Catherine Tate best as, you know, the woman with this funny sketch show I'm not allowed to stay up and watch.
Yeah.
So I was expecting it to be an all-out comedy companion, and her performance at the end of this episode completely inverses that expectation.
Definitely, yeah. I've just lost the thing I was about to read out from one of our listeners. I put it out on every week, guys. I go on Twitter and Instagram @BiggerOnThePod, and I ask you guys your opinions on whatever episode we're about to talk about. This week, of course, it was the fires of Pompeii, and I'll read the one response that I can find straight away from Lavender Possum on Twitter. So thank you very much. Unsure if it was intentional, but the episode feels like a nice callback to the Aztecs episode from Classic Who in terms of story and themes. Donna Noble is my favorite, and her interaction with Ten is always fun to watch. So yeah, maybe that's why we felt, or me especially, felt some sort of disconnect from the episode, because I'm not a big indulger in Classic Who, so perhaps people who are more familiar with that would have felt a more sort of grounded response to it.
Perhaps. I mean, I didn't really think about the connection to Classic Who, but I guess there are some elements of it that, without watching Classic Who, do evoke that aesthetic, like especially when they're in kind of like the Roman family's house and the set. I don't imagine that's too dissimilar to the kind of sets they would have had in Classic Who. Just nice cameras and lighting. Now
I'm not sure about the interior sets, but I know the exterior sets were all an actual film production studio somewhere in Italy, I want to say, which is where they recently filmed The Two Popes and the Eurovision Song Contest 1991.
Huh. That's a very random fact.
It is. We like to change things up on the podcast now and again, but one thing that is obviously very consistent is the quiz.
You, not me. I hate being patient. Patience is for wimps.
Yay, the quiz. Oh boy.
As I said last week, Series 4, so 4 questions for Harry to get wrong this week. Question number 1. When introduced to Peter Capaldi, what name did the Doctor and Donna take on?
They take on Spartacus.
Correct, Amondo. Well done. What is Peter Capaldi's character known for selling?
Is it marble?
It is marble. Well done. When talking to the youngest family member, Donna Noble references a UK shop. Can you remember what that UK shop is? She gives it a funny name, so I will take both answers.
I don't know. Is it like Morrison's or something?
TK Maxx, and she calls it TK Maximus.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
At the end of the episode, Peter Capaldi's character, when it's 6 months later, he's asking for a belt buckle thing that has a insect printed upon it. Can you remember the insect that is mentioned to be printed upon the belt buckle?
That's such an infuriatingly specific question. I'm gonna say like a beetle.
Yes! 3 out of 4, Harry. You're doing better now that I'm putting more questions there.
Well, yeah, because there's more opportunities to guess right.
But even
Like,
as I
that's
go,
one
who played the
complete
Doctor?
guess.
You'd like, John Pertwee? I'm like, no, Harry, you were wrong again. Do you have anything to recommend again, Harry, or have you forgotten and you would like me to go first?
Before I go, I just want to tell you you were fantastic.
You go first while I try to think of something and ultimately fail.
Okay, so the thing I'm going to recommend this week isn't a perfect thing, and it's not something I thought I was going to particularly enjoy, but I did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would, and that is the Friends reunion. So by the time this episode goes out, a lot of people will have already seen it who wants to see it. But me personally didn't really grow up in a Friends era, but my older brother and sister very much did, so I was very aware of its presence, and I think it's almost impossible to avoid Friends. But if you're not a fan of the show, but you're just a fan of TV and media in the industry, I think it's a very interesting watch to see these people and to hear about the connection that this show gave them and see them interacting again and living out on the set again. And obviously, unfortunately, James Corden's there, but he's not that much in it. And there's some random celebrity guest interviews as well for no reason. But there is some really good stuff in there when it actually comes to the main cast members and their memories of the show and what it's like seeing each other. And it's sort of very well done with growing old and reflecting on like these important times in your life, which is what the show Friends is actually about. So it's quite interesting, that aspect of it. So I'm going to recommend the reunion episode of Friends.
Do you think that, because I've heard this argument from some people, do you think it's better that they did a more conventional reunion rather than creating a new episode?
Yes and no, because I feel either way people were going to be annoyed by what they did. If you brought it back and did a reunion episode, like a reboot, where are they now? People, not everybody's going to be available, and you might have had like a scene where, oh look, it's everybody's with David Schwimmer apart from Lisa Kudrow because she wasn't available this day, and then in the next scene everybody's there apart from Jennifer Aniston and Matt LeBlanc because they were available. You run that risk of really limiting certain aspects that you can do, and also that you then have to pick up all these loose ends And of course, it's not going to be set in the same apartment because everybody will have moved away. So it wouldn't really feel like Friends. I would imagine it would feel like you were watching an episode of Cougar Town, which was Courtney Cox's comedy afterwards, which had guest appearances from Matthew Perry, Lisa Kudrow, and Jennifer Aniston. Because you could put the cast of Friends on another set and it wouldn't feel like Friends, because Friends is also the apartment and Central Perk and all that stuff. And if you can't put them there, then what's the actual point of doing that again? Do you know what I mean? So I feel this was a good way, and I feel I would rather watch something like this than watch a new episode of Friends.
Interesting.
How about yourself? What are your things? Have you watched the Friends reunion or?
I've not watched Reunion. I saw Friends a lot growing up because it's impossible to not see Friends growing up.
Yeah.
So I like Friends. It's not my favorite sitcom I've had, but I think it's a very good sitcom, and I understand why it's so popular. I don't know. I feel like the thing with Reunion is it would have to be at least as well written as the original sitcom was, if not even better written to match the expectation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it would have been possible to do that, because I feel like you're not just fighting the quality of the original show, you're also fighting people's nostalgia for that show, which then elevates the material in their hearts and minds. So I'm not saying it can't be done, because I've seen it done. I've seen certain reunions. Like I remember, when they brought back Gavin and Stacey, was it 2 Christmases ago now?
Yeah.
1 Christmas ago?
Will be 2 Christmases
I feel like
this
that,
year,
yeah. But when they did that Gavin and Stacey reunion, I think that matched the quality of the original show in every area, which was a miracle that they managed to do that.
But I also feel that might be to do with the fact that Gavin and Stacey didn't really have a definitive conclusion. There wasn't the classic sitcom thing of the lead character walking out the flat, turning around, turning the light off, switching the light off and closing the door. Gavin and Stacey just had a really nice final episode, and that was it. In the same way the In-Betweeners sort of ended with them going on a camping trip, and then they did the movies afterwards, which had a more definitive close point. But whereas Friends had that sort of, this is the last episode, we're going to tie everything up, so they're going to live happily ever after. I think Lisa Kudrow says it in the Friends reunion. She says, if you bring it back, you have to undo all those knots, and you have to undo a perfect bow to look at the present and then wrap it all up again.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they bring the In-Betweeners, because obviously they did try to do that weird reunion thing, which was in many senses similar to what this Friends reunion was. But it was the original cast all just driving around in the car.
And that was the best bit of that whole thing. In the same way that the Friends reunion, the best thing about that is seeing them on the set. And the best thing about the In-Betweeners reunion is seeing them interacting with each other and going back to the school and being in the car and doing all that stuff. But the worst part of that, and the worst part of the Friends reunion, in my opinion, is when they're sat talking to a host about their time on that show. Because even though that's fun, we don't really enjoy the third party element of Jimmy Carr, James Corden, whoever that might be, because they're not part of the Friends In-Betweeners group. Do you know what I mean? They're just a celebrity fan. And I feel that can sort of cheapen it a little bit. That said, James Corden does do a good job at hosting that Friends reunion. Even though I'm not his biggest fan, he does do a good job at it. And it's very clear that he's very excited to be there. But I just don't think that aspect of the show was needed that much.
What if it had been hosted by like someone on the show? Let's say, what if like Paul Rudd had been the one coordinating that interview?
Well, spoilers, but Paul Rudd doesn't appear in the Friends reunion at all. Like, he's mentioned, but to then go back to what you said about them doing an actual episode, it's like, well, if he's not available to do a quick video message and say hello, is he going to turn up and do you know what I mean?
That's true. Like, obviously, you have to write around. So, Phoebe, why is your husband not with you?
Yeah.
And it would either be they just make a very weak, he's doing something else. We can make it. Or they'd have to do some really maybe make a joke of like, oh, he died, because that's the kind of thing that would happen to Phoebe's husband. But then everyone would hate that because they're like, no, you killed the character who I liked. I mean, also, the reason why he's not there is because he's Ant-Man. So
yeah, and also we're very good friends, and when we go back to our sort of close group of friends from sixth form, when was the last time we were all in a room together? It was probably quite a while ago, considering. So what are the actual realistic chances that 20 plus years later, the same group of friends are all going to get together? Because you're going to have great new friends and do your own thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I also think as a story point, it doesn't really work out. If it was a family, which it is with Ross and Monica, then yeah, but I sort of feel like,
Yeah.
So what are you recommending?
So that concludes our... So, I have to recommend something. Oh yeah, shit. I was hoping by just keeping you talking about friends who'd have forgotten I'd have to recommend something. Well, if we're on the subject of beloved 90s sitcoms, I don't know if I've ever recommended it before, but it's my favorite comedy. It is Seinfeld.
Yep.
So it's if you're one of those people who's jaded by Friends, because I know there are some people who are jaded by Friends and they don't like the sentimentality of it or whatever, which I don't mind it. I think it's nice. But Seinfeld is the complete inverse of that. It's a show that predates Friends a little bit. It's in many ways it's got a very similar energy of just kind of characters, friends talking around, chatting shit. But then the direction their stories take, instead of having big overarching storylines, which they sometimes have, kind of the two rules of the show by its creator was no lessons, no hugs.
Yeah.
So the characters never grow, they never learn anything, they just make the same stupid mistakes over and over again, and it gets funnier each time.
Yeah.
And you get to learn to love these characters, you learn to love to hate these characters. You learn to love watching them fuck up. I love Seinfeld. I love that neurotic foursome. And the crazy, crazy funny things that they do. So that's what I'm going to recommend. Go watch the Seinfeld show. It's Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David are the two most bankable comedians in the US for a reason.
Cool beans. I like the 90s turned out a lot of shit, but the sitcoms were quite good.
Yes.
Frasier, Seinfeld, Friends, Malcolm in the Middle, a little bit.
What do you think about Everybody Loves Raymond?
I've never seen it, so I couldn't possibly pass an opinion.
I don't really like Everybody Loves Raymond.
But I'll tell you what I do like, Harry. I like it when people like, comment, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, and follow us on all our social media accounts, which can be found in the description below. I think we've spoken more about our recommendations than we did about the actual episode of Doctor Who, but that's fine. It's fun.
Yeah, half of this episode was talking about Friends, which I don't mind. I like Friends. I like talking about Friends.
And we had that episode where I horribly laughed at those other people doing a Friends watch along podcast, and I'm sure that they've been over the moon with the Friends reunion news. So good luck to them as well.
Aye.
All about spreading the love.
Yeah, I bet they've got 3 whole news sections out talking about whether or not Matthew Perry's okay.
Matthew Perry? Oh yeah, Matthew Perry, yeah.
Yeah, everyone was saying is Matthew Perry all right? Because apparently he got really emotional or something.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, it's not been overblown.
No, I asked him.
Matthew Perry
Let's give him a ring.
Oh, you rung him up. It's like, hey Matt, you doing good? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah,
he's just drunk. Right. Anyway. It's about the volcano drinking Matthew Perry. I don't know. I just said it. I don't know any context. Anyway, we'll end this podcast here. I think Matthew Perry's fine. I've seen stuff in the past about Matthew Perry. I might edit this bit out. Let me do a clean slate where I end the podcast. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. And Harry, what episode are we back with next week?
Next week we are back with, is it called Planet of the Ood?
Is it a 2-parter or is this a 1-parter?
No, it's just a 1-parter.
Yes,
I think the 2-parter comes after it.
That's true. I also spoilers, we pre-record these, so I'm very much looking forward to when we get to this episode, hearing your segue into the fires of Pompeii. I'm sure it was amazing.
That was crossed my mind.
All right, we'll see you guys soon, guys. Say goodbye, Harry.
Bye-bye.
Oh, nope, wait.
Make sure you subscribe to the official Bigger on the Inside podcast.